Get ready to ignite your real estate business with the Launch Your Farm podcast. Our episodes are packed with inspiration, success stories, and expert strategies that will help you dominate your geographic farm. So tune in and enjoy.
What marketing is all about is putting a message to the consumer so that they will want to respond, feel compelled to respond if the time is right.
Welcome back to another episode of the Launch Your Farm Show. I'm your host, Ryan Smith, and today we've got a great guest. It's Stuart Sutton with EXP. So Stuart, take a second, tell us a bit about yourself and why you're here.
Well, thanks, Ryan. I really appreciate the opportunity to visit with you and in your listeners. I actually specialize in niche marketing, and it goes a lot farther than just thinking, okay, I'm going to start marketing to a particular type of property. We've got a lot more that's involved in that, and it has sociological impact. And the types of expertise that you build are really going to have a big impact on how you brand and position yourself. And that's what we try to get across to agents is building that type of brand rather than just randomly prospecting in an area. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. You're speaking to the converted. For those of you who don't know, my listeners, I used to run a podcast called The Niche Agent. I call it The Niche because we're in Canada. And that was something what kind of led me to where I'm doing now is I really believe that it's important to niche down and really find a group of people that you can focus on or whatever your niche is going to be to help build that credibility, build trust. And we're going to dive into some of that today because I think it's important for agents to realize the opportunities they have when they do that. And I'm sure you can agree that most agents are afraid of niching down because they're afraid of missing out. They think they're missing more business. And the reality is there's more business than you can keep up with if you know how to do it right and are willing to put the right things. So before we dive into the niches, let's talk about your kind of past, how you got here and what brought you to where you're at today.
Well, it actually started because I was doing what traditional agents always do if they're taught to do those things, which most are. So when I started in real estate, it was a lot of people think it was pretty far back, but I did start in the 80s, and a lot of agents that are listening to this weren't around in the 80s. But as time went by, obviously expireds for sale by owners, cold calling, door knocking, that was my modus operandi, and I did a lot of it. I did it extensively, and we built a thriving business from it. But then I met a girl. We had kids. Our first was very young, and I still remember this, Ryan. We were playing on the floor, playing Hot Wheels, lining them up, doing all those little things that an organized little mind likes to do. And my phone rang, and he put his hand on my arm and said, "Daddy, please don't answer that." Mm. And of course, my heart melted, and I did not answer it. And I've never answered my phone again when I was with my kids.
Wow.
And I started down the path and can absolutely look you straight in the eye and tell you I've not worked a weekend or an evening since that day. And he's 28 years old now. So that's been 27 years. Wow. And I knew that I had to find a way, either had to leave real estate or find a way to battle and overcome the paradigms in real estate. You have to work weekends, you have to work evenings, you have to work long hours. I either had to overcome that or I had to do something else. Yeah. So that's why I went down the path I did.
That's awesome. And there's a lot to unpack here because I think it's important to understand why you did, how you did it, and what you did. So for you, obviously you had that shift, you had that mindset shift. What did you at the beginning start to do differently? Because obviously you said, okay, I'm having that change. What was that first kind of year look like when you're saying, okay, I'm changing what I'm doing?
Good question. It's I really started asking questions, started looking, started talking to agents, and it occurred to me that there just wasn't anybody doing what I felt like I needed to do. Mm-hmm. It was just the norm. If you went into real estate, you worked weekends, you showed property on Saturdays, you held open houses on Sundays, you went on listing appointments at 6:30 and missed dinner, and that was just the norm. That's just It was part of the complaint, but part of what brought everyone together. Hey, we're all in this together. We all do this. Mm-hmm. But then I had a coach, and it was it was a cold calling coach, and you get to the point where you can't do much more. cold calling.
Yeah.
But I did find it was referred by him, as a matter of fact, to another coach who, within about a 6-month period, took me from cold calling 2 to 4 hours a day to not cold calling at all. And that is what allowed me the marketing aspect, because what I did was set myself up so that people contacted me rather than me chasing them. And when I made that transition, didn't happen overnight, but took about 6 months for me to get to where I literally had to make no cold calls.
Nice.
And again, never worked weekends or evenings again.
That's awesome. And I think it is a big, like you said, a paradigm shift for people to really reshape that, because it is so ingrained in the culture of our business. And if you look at any other business, most businesses aren't like that. Most lawyers, even commercial real estate agents, generally don't work it. So we put ourselves in that we have to do that. And the reality is we don't have to. We can choose to, and we can do that. And you're obviously living proof that you don't have to, and you have to be putting the right things on. And one of the things that I'm a big believer in is when you put constraints on things, it then creates more opportunities. And when you don't put the constraints on, then you just kind of go with the flow. So obviously it sounds like you put on time constraints. So what started happening when you did that? Because I think it's important to just kind of like walk us through, like, okay, now I'm saying I'm not doing that. How did things shift, and how did that change for you then?
Well, you're good at this. That's a great question. So going down that path, basically, Ryan, what I decided was that I had to change the perspective of me. So when most people saw me, they saw a real estate agent.
Yeah.
I mean, I would often go to somebody's house and they'd say, "Gosh, you're much nicer than we." They'd say, "You're much nicer than we thought you'd be." And I'd say, "Well, why is that?" Because I was a hardcore cold caller. I mean, I was a closer. I knew 52 closes. A little embarrassed a minute, but I would close people who didn't want to meet with me, and then I'd go meet with them. And then it turned out, turned out to be a pretty nice guy, but their perception of me as a real estate agent, was lumped in with real estate agents and salespeople and things like that.
Yeah.
So going down this path, there in other industries, in what my marketing coach showed me was in other industries, there are lots and lots of strategies that we don't use in real estate. And they're sociologically bound. There are rules in place that you follow and I follow and everybody listening to this follows that we don't know. It's just part of the norm. And part of that has to do with how we perceive particular people in particular situations. So I don't care if you're a plumber, if you're in the medical industry, legal industry, accounting, architecture, flooring, it doesn't matter. If you're considered an expert with a level of knowledge, experience, education above the norm, you're treated differently. That's in every industry. I just had that experience in the flooring industry where I had to bring on an expert. Guess what? There's 3 things people do with experts. If they're truly perceived of an expert and they have that credibility, they seek them out. I had to go find somebody that could solve my problem. Secondly, they pay them more. I mean, who do you think makes more money? Your family doctor or your cardiologist? Okay. And third, they trust them more. So once I realized, okay, wait a minute, would I like people to come to me? Would I like people to pay me more? Would I like them to trust me more? Those are 3 pretty big fat yeses.
Yeah, exactly. And it comes from niching down and being that specialist. And that's something I'm a big believer in. As I said, for my followers who listen, know I talk about the CPR, which is the foundation of what I think real farming is about. And the middle part is the P is positioning, is you position yourself as an expert, and an ambassador. And when you do that, it becomes super powerful. And I'll just share my story quickly to add to it. When we started our farm, I'd moved to the area, didn't really know anyone in the area. And the area that we started farming didn't sold any homes in the area, but we positioned ourselves and branded ourselves as the neighborhood expert. So we were the Orchard real estate team, and we branded ourselves around the Orchard. Instead of just saying I'm Ryan Smith, it was the Orchard real estate team. We knew all the builders, we knew the models, the floor plans. We could tell you this was a Empire model, 1,365 square feet, elevation B. We learned about the schools and we learned all that stuff. And then when we walk in, we have confidence. People know who we are. We stand out, and that positioning creates that expertise. And I think, like you're saying, it just knocks the socks out of most people and allows you to stand out and create an opportunity that no other agent's going to have. So for you, how did you start to do that? How did you build that credibility, and how did you do it so quickly? Because you said took about 6 months to start.
Well,
seeing
you
those
know
kind of
what?
results.
I can't condone enough and applaud enough the way you did it. You went to a new market, and pretty soon you were on top, and that came because you focused and built expertise. But beyond that, you actually positioned yourself so that the consumer recognized that expertise.
Yeah.
And that's, I mean, you are the epitome of the way I believe real estate should be sold. I bet you, and you don't have to answer, but I bet you don't spend too many Saturday afternoons away from your family because of real estate business.
Yep.
Because people come to you. They want that orchard expert, right?
Yep, exactly.
And I know that some agents wonder, there's actually people in my market who have named their brokerage, named their team or whatever after a particular area. And they're going, well, that's kind of limiting. Well, guess what? People who limit themselves to a particular type of property or particular area within an industry are usually the top income earners.
Yeah. Exactly.
And I bet you that it has never stopped you one time from someone going, well, would you talk to me about selling my house over here that's not in the orchard?
Yep.
Just because you happen to know about the orchard doesn't inhibit them from doing business with you.
Exactly. And then you, like I said, when you put the constraints on it, you then see other opportunities. So when we saw that, we started getting people going, do you work this area? Then we started to have our power brands. We had our main overall brand, and it was brought to you by, and then we had information on the other areas we serve, and we're intentionally educating people on we specialize in this area, and we also do these things too, but here's our main reason why you should work with us in this area.
Yeah. And that makes total sense. I mean, you've got it down. And back to your question. So what I started doing immediately was leaning, if I was going to be considered an expert and meet those parameters of, hey, they're going to seek me out, they're going to pay me more. And let me stop on those real quick. When someone seeks me out.
Your camera turned off.
Do what? Oh,
there we
go. All right. So going back to those three, when someone seeks me out, I don't have to chase them. It's a very different position when they want to do business with me.
Yeah.
I basically can set the parameters for how we meet, when we meet, and what we do during that meeting. So when they seek me out, I'm not dealing with rejection. What do most agents fear? Rejection.
Yep.
What do you and I deal with? Not rejection. For the most part, it's who do we want to do business with, who do we prefer to do business with. So we don't deal with rejection because they seek us out. I don't ever answer I've been training agents for a long time, like you have. And when one of the biggest questions I get, and you may or may not get this question, but it's, well, when someone asks me to reduce my commission, what do I say? And my response is, well, I don't know. They go, wait a minute, you've been in real estate like 1,000 years. Your license number is single digits. I mean, what do you mean you don't know? Well, nobody ever asks me. So, I mean, I know what I'd say, but the thing is, and you mentioned it, it's your middle letter, which is P. If you position yourself properly and they come to you, they don't care.
Yeah.
They don't have a question. They don't have a doubt. They don't have a concern about your fee because you're an expert.
Yeah.
They feel like that fee is justified.
Yeah, exactly.
So anyway, I went about trying to learn what it took to be an expert. And the first was product knowledge. Like you said, you got to know everything about the houses, and you could tell them what plan they were and all that. So that's what I did. But I went out and previewed every house in my market that was on the market. And then as they came on, I continued to go see every house. And believe it or not, I still do that today. I'm not a spring chicken anymore, but I get out and I go look at houses. Yeah. And so the product, I can speak to it when I'm sitting in front of a seller and about the value of their home and how it compares to others. I can speak to it like nobody else can. Because of the product knowledge. And the second is market knowledge. Well, how does my market differ? I mean, my market performs differently than the overall market. Houses stay on the market a little bit longer. Average price is a little bit higher. Days on market and list to sell ratio. And I've got a kind of a grouping of ratios that I discuss with my sellers that other agents just aren't aware of. So there's niche knowledge, market knowledge. Product knowledge, market knowledge, and then niche knowledge. And that's what you mentioned. You literally just went right down that line. what are the nuances within that particular property? You knew the schools and the programs and all the different things that affected that neighborhood. And I know those things. And I specialize in small acreage homes. You probably don't want me to go on and on about septic systems on this podcast. We might not keep people on very long, but I know things about the properties that I deal with that other agents aren't going to know. So that's the first thing was gleaning the knowledge that I needed in order to give myself the credibility of an expert.
Yeah, that's huge. And I want to dive into the part about the other agents not knowing it too, because I think that's a big part too, is it's not just to the consumer itself. And what I found, and again, in my experience, was when we knew that stuff, when we had agents coming to us, the agents treated us as an expert. And then we were negotiating. And when we were negotiating our contracts, it's, hey, I know this area better than you coming to bring me an offer. You're not even from this area and you're coming from out of town, or you don't know the intricacies of it. So there's instant credibility and there's a trust factor that they trust that you know that the house is priced. And for us in our farm, we kind of broke it down into 6 areas. We blocked it down into 6 blocks and we called them quadrants, even though there's 6 of them. And each of those 6 areas had its own kind of distinct price points and styles. And we could tell you these kind of homes are over here, this price point's over here, this pocket gets more money than this pocket. And when you know that, it helps on both sides. It helps with the consumers and the agents. And I think that's is important too, because then that again positions you as that expert on both sides. And then that just elevates your status overall. So you mentioned yours is small acreage properties. I think that's an awesome target to go after. And I think it's great because you know who you're looking for. You can tangibly say, this is who, like, you fit the criteria, you don't fit the criteria. You're not looking for a subdivision home like I was selling. You're looking for very specific. Why did you choose that niche, and what did that look like for you in selecting that?
Well, basically at the time I had sold a few of them, not enough to consider myself an expert or dominant or anything like that. But as I started looking around and did my research, I realized that there were several factors that really came into play of that being a good niche. And in Texas, we do say niche, and it's okay for me if you say niche, but if you're in Texas, you got to go with that hard niche.
I say it both, so I'm okay.
So there's an old marketing rule. It's better to be first than it is to be best. Mm-hmm. And we've seen that in everything, all kinds of products and services. So we can take all those lessons we learned from big companies, and we can bring them down to our little world. And nobody was doing that, and they still aren't. Yeah. We've got agents that do farms and ranches because they like those big old commissions, and they're kind of like commercial agents. They don't ever call you back either. I'm just kidding. My sister's a commercial agent. I tease her about that all the time. But actually, I was in a listing appointment one time, and we were talking about it, and the wife brought something up, asked about how they'd come across me and all that, and so it came up with a commercial agent, and I said, well, did you get a call back? And they said no. And I said, well, that's because commercial agents don't ever call you back. and she looked at her husband, and he looked at me, and I said, you're a commercial agent, aren't you? And he was.
That's funny.
But I still got the listing. So anyway, so nobody was really doing it, and there were these nuances and all these little factors that made it kind of a challenging transaction if you weren't aware of what you were doing. Yeah. So I did a little research on, turnover ratio and success ratio and all the different things, and said, all right, this looks like it'll work. And positioned myself, got a brand, got a logo, got a URL, email, all that matches up to my brand, and started marketing into it. And they started contacting me, and probably just like you, I'll walk in and they'll have marketing pieces they've gotten from me for the last several years that they've kept.
Yeah. And that's the fun part that I love about it, is when you're walking into an easy appointment because they have your stuff. Like we used to do a binder with a report each month, and we had information that we send out, and they keep the hard copy of the binder, and they'd like, if we walk in and they've got the binder in their hand, which half the time they did, or you see it over on their desk, it's like, yeah, we got this because no one else has that. And then the great opportunity for you to use that, as you're not knocking any other agents, you're just saying, here's what I do that they're not doing. It's like, oh, the other agents don't do this. Oh, you haven't gotten this kind of report. They don't know this information. Okay, well, that's why we're the experts, and that's why. So that's great that you do that, because I think that, again, a lot of agents are afraid to keep focused because of that fear of missing out. And again, they miss out on more business than they'll ever lose by going too small. So when you chose that area and you started narrowing down, what were some of the difficulties you had? You mentioned there's some tricky things in the transaction, things you need to learn. What was those kind of road speed bumps that you kind of hit along the way as you were figuring things out?
Well, good question, because it really comes back to the positioning and the credibility. So branding is not really difficult. Consistent branding is really important. But then the marketing comes into, okay, what are those challenges? And we don't pick on agents at all. As a matter of fact, it's just a personal policy. We don't ever. But sometimes we do have to point out, hey, this is an area we're familiar with. Give me an example, a home on 1.7 acres that has a workshop and has expensive fencing. That's a lot of darn fencing. Yeah. And it's got a well, and then another one on 3.6 acres over there doesn't have a workshop. It doesn't have a well, and it's got more acreage. And okay, well, you can't do price per square foot. How do you value properties like that? And so we actually, through our marketing, talk about the pricing aspect. And then we talk about the presentation aspect. You can't just present a home like that like any other listing. Yeah. So a lot of our marketing says, hey, do you want your home presented like every other listing, or for what it is to attract the kind of buyers that want what you have?
That's great.
So we're not afraid to do things like, well, I'll just go ahead and say this, but I'll do things like headlines. One of my favorite says, you should never price your home on an acre or more where your agent recommends. Here's why. And agents look at me like, are you kidding? I mean, are you bashing agents? Well, we're not. Yep. We're not at all. We're saying there's some factors that if an agent recommends you price here, you need to take into consideration, because there's a chance, if they're not familiar with this type of property, there's a chance they didn't take them into consideration. Yeah. So there's some factors that it just goes along those lines as far as our marketing in order to position ourselves, but we never ever talk negatively. Yep. If you read our line and you think it might be, once you get into the information, you realize it's not.
Yeah, that's when we were doing our presentations, I did like a full formal presentation. I would have our books and things like that. And then people would say, oh, wow, I've never seen like this. Say, oh, you haven't? And just let see the doubt plant itself and just go, why we put our time and energy into becoming the experts here, because we want to be the specialists and we want to make sure that you know that we're here to help you. And that, again, that builds credibility when they know that you specialize in that area and that they trust you. So I want to ask about the marketing itself, because you mentioned marketing, because I think a lot of agents, based on historical training, they've told you have to prospect, you have to cold call, you have to hunt down the next kill. How did you create marketing, and what does that marketing look like for you? Because I find a lot of agents aren't natural marketers. It's not something they're usually gifted or talented at. So for a lot of agents, they struggle with marketing, and in my opinion, struggling with good marketing. How did you kind of figure out the marketing piece of it?
Well, I was just blessed. I had a coach that just really guided me. Unfortunately, he's really old and decrepit and doesn't coach anymore. I'm just kidding. He might be listening. So, but no, I had a mentor that kind of took me down the path. And as you start to figure things out and the light bulb goes on, it truly is amazing, because what marketing is all about is putting a message to the consumer so that they will want to respond, feel compelled to respond if the time is right, versus me calling them. Time may not be right. Now, if I can't tell them at just the right time, I'm cold calling, then good for me. But I can send out, and one of my agents whose light bulb just kind of started to go on told me the other day, well, I can send out a marketing piece to 1,000 people in 20 minutes, but to knock on their doors or cold call them, that's a lot of time and effort. Yeah. And it is. But the marketing piece is just, it takes time. It takes a little effort. So some people, they just, like you said, they struggle with it. I embraced it, and maybe it's my personality, but I like it. I spend the time that I used to maybe spend cold calling, creating marketing, creating the videos that go with the piece, and putting messages out there that they're compelled to follow up with. And when they do, and they contact me, it's that feeling where you're continually supported by the fact that consumers want and like what you do, because it's got a value to them.
And I think it's important what you said is that the marketing should compel them to want to reach out to you. And that's you and I are both into direct response marketing and getting people to put their hand up, and not just brand building and not just getting your name out there. And I find that, again, a lot of agents who have not understood this type of marketing will just keep blasting the same message that doesn't really get a response, or they don't track it, or they don't test it, or they aren't consistent with it, and they just send out something and go, oh, that doesn't work, and then write off marketing as a whole. Talk to us about the direct response marketing and how you do that, because obviously for you it's been working, and it's been working consistently. What kind of things are you offering? What kind of things are you doing to get people to put their hand up and get them to reach out to you? If you want.
It's really a continuous process of creation, but the last time I looked, I had between 450 and 500 marketing pieces that we had created and used. Now, some of them, I don't mind telling you, I literally have taken the idea directly from my coach. I've taken the idea directly from other agents and tweaked it and used it for my own. But 90% of what we send out is a creation based on really the first aspect, the consumer. Mm-hmm. What is it they need? What is it they want? How can we solve it for them? Okay. So one of the biggest things that I've always tried to find out is, how do I get ahead of it? How do I get ahead of every other agent and reach the consumer before they do? Reach that person who's going to sell their house next year. How do I get ahead of all those other agents? And I've tried all kinds of things. I won't tell you the exact URL, but I used to have URLs where I told them I could give them their home value in the future. Now, you can't do that. And I didn't do that. And I didn't promise to do that. But what we did was set them up on a schedule so that when the time came, it would automatically kick in, and we do the market analysis and send it to them. I mean, we've tried all kinds of things. And we've developed something that really works incredibly well, where I have listings that typically aren't going on the market for 2 months, 4 months, 6 months. I've even it's not uncommon for me to have a listing that's going on the market a year from now, because of the type of marketing that we do. So we've tried to set ourselves into the mind of that 1 acre plus seller, or that condo seller, or whoever it is, so that they feel like, well, you know what, we need to go down the path with this person, not just call them 2 weeks before it's time to list. So a lot of that comes into an educational process 100%. Of what do you do to maximize your value through the preparation process and the presentation process for your home. And the education process, every single thing we send out sends them to a video. And I know a lot of agents are not comfortable with videos, but there was a time when I didn't have any videos, and I've got thousands out there now, and it's just, and the first ones were just horrible. They were just terrible. I hear you. Go back and look at them, and you go, how in the world does that have 20 views? I mean, who wants to watch that thing? But as time goes by, you just kind of get a little more comfortable with it, and the process has actually become easier. It's much easier to do a video now than it's ever been before. But every single one of our marketing pieces send them to a video so they can get some comfort with who I am and the type of business that I do and the type of person I am. So usually when I go out to there was a day when I went out to their house when they say, well, we saw, one of your videos and we like what you had to say. Now they go, we have been watching your videos. It's kind of a different mindset. So they've been watching them, since they've been getting my marketing, and they really have a good feel for who I am and what we do.
Yeah. And that's why I'm, again, with my CPR, it's the first part is community. When you put the community first and you focus on their needs, you mentioned how it should be consumer centric, not brand centric or chest beating or I'm the best. And when you put them first, you then see opportunities that most agents will just skip over. You'll see ways to market yourself. You'll see opportunities that other agents don't see. And one of the ones that we created was, we called it My Home Jumpstart. So what we were finding was we were getting a lot of people who, in our area, we had a lot of dual income people working, very stressed, trying to manage kids, work life and they were thinking about selling but weren't ready just yet. So we said, hey, we'll walk you through that process months in advance. We'll help you get prepared. We'll create a list for you. We'll sit down with you, create a plan for you over the next few months and get your home prepped. In the meantime, what we'll do is we have exclusive listings. So we'll take your home and put it on our market. We'll reach out. We'll start getting some buzz before we even hit the market. In the meantime, we can kind of hold your hand as you go along and just take some of that pressure off you. And that just solidified a lot of listings for us months in advance because people are going, yeah, okay, that helps take the pressure off. But if we weren't paying attention, if we weren't seeing who our niche was, our niche was, we would have missed that. So you have to know your audience. And I think for you obviously have done that extremely well in your audience. So what kind of opportunities have you found that other agents may have missed or skipped over based on knowing your audience well?
Well, you know what? You just hit it. That advanced assistance and preparation and handholding is so crucial. They've never experienced it before. I mean, it's amazing how everything I thought I had was a good idea, you're already doing. It's pretty cool. But thinking in advance, and that's what, when I said we have sometimes people listed months in advance, it's because we're taking them through the process of getting their house. Now, if they want to list it 2 weeks ahead, that's fine, but they can't get nearly as much done. And from our statistics, it shows the people who get the most money are the ones who start earlier. Does that make sense?
Yep. That's what triggered that thought. And that's exactly why we did that, because we knew, and for us, it was selfless and selfish. And it's like, hey, we're going to tie in and lock down these listings ahead of time, and we're going to help them. And then by doing that, they're going to get more money, which then puts more money in our pocket, which other agents aren't doing that and will stand out. So is there anything else you're doing that you can substantially say, hey, we're doing this and no other agents are doing in our area?
Well, as far as the actual prospecting marketing type scenario, the return on that, I think a lot of people miss out because they just try to do a generic campaign. And I helped an agent the other day with they had paid a marketing company and they were going to send out all this incredibly and it was very pretty, but it was very generic. It basically said, hey, I'm just like every other agent, but my marketing is very pretty. It didn't say anything that provided a benefit that gave the seller a compelling reason to call them instead of somebody else. And that's really the key, is to differentiate. And we all say that. I can't tell you how many times I've heard a trainer or broker, a manager or a coach say you've got to differentiate, but then nobody does. It's amazing how much generic stuff I get just because, guess what? It's easy to do. It's not easy to create an effective market, to take your data and say, all right, what do these people need? How can I meet that? I just sent out a piece that said it might be more critical than ever that you talk to Stuart about your 1 acre plus home. And then it had one of those EKG graphics on it. And the critical part is because the market's changing. And, let's face it, most agents have never even been in a shifting market like this. So that's one piece I sent. Another was appealing to people as people. And it basically says, hey, if settling for less is not for you, then when you sell your 1 acre plus home, do what these owners did. And it's basically my version of a sold card. Those owners called me because these are the things we do that other agents don't do. So the marketing is just something that we continually try to create and stay ahead of. I've got marketing pieces ready to go out for the next 7 months. I know what they are and we're ahead of it. And it's not something I'm scrambling to do. It's a part of our process.
Yeah, that's huge. And that's if agents just plan ahead a little bit, that will keep them on top of things. Because I've seen in my experience, there's a lot of agents will go, I'll get around to it, and then next thing you know, and then they're scrambling, like you said, to put out something, and then it either doesn't get done or it doesn't get done to the quality that it needs to be. And there's huge opportunities if you just plan that out and think ahead. And it also allows you to again see opportunities and see where there's some gaps I need to fill here, or maybe fix this or tweak this when you are thinking ahead like that, which is awesome. So I just want to wrap up then with, if you were to give our agents one last piece of advice, if they're looking to get into a niche, trying to figure out their own market that they're going to kind of crack into, what advice would you give them, and how can that help them?
Well, really a couple of things. First of all, remember the science. Now, I don't know that I really think that has tremendous impact based on the environment and the political and social issues going on and all that. But sociology is a real science. And when you're considered an expert by the consumer, they treat you differently. They really and truly do. I've listed homes instead of family members because I'm the expert. So understand the impact of the expert perspective from a consumer's point of view. And secondly is, do your research. It's boring. It's not exciting, but when you're going to spend hard-earned and dollars to send out there in marketing, would you rather send it to an area that turns over at 4% or one that turns over at 8%? I mean, for the same amount of money, you're getting twice the opportunities. And, that's the type of thing we pay very close attention to. And it's not because I'm brilliant, it's probably because I'm cheap, but we want to make sure that we get the best investment return we can.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and it's important to take that into consideration when you are choosing, because a lot of people just haphazardly pick an area or pick something because they like it and not do the research. I've seen it where people just say, "Oh, I live in the area, so I want to farm the area." I'm like, is that the best area? If you want to, that's great, but that may not be the best. So that's awesome. That's great advice. And we always wrap up with a best book. So what's one book that you recommend that's had an impact on your life, or you think would have an impact on our viewers' lives?
Well, I'll and you gave me permission to do this, so I'll say the first one. I actually will give this to any of your listeners at no cost, but I've got a small book. It's an easy read. It's called Niche Marketing Blueprint, and it literally leads them through step by step of how we do what we do and how they can do exactly the same thing. But the best book, there's just so many, but when it comes right down to it, have you ever heard of a book, and I know you have, but book called The Power of Habits? I think that's the title.
Yep.
Or it might just be Habits by Charles Dugas. Is that right?
Power Habits. Yeah.
It is an incredible book. I mean, if you want to set your day to where it's extremely effective, you want to break bad habits and create good habits, that book is absolutely phenomenal. Yeah,
that was a great book. So it helped me go to the gym. That was the one where they put the shoes by the door, and that's I've taken that. Yeah, it's a great book. So that's awesome. We'll put that in the recommendations to find out how do they get your book then.
Well, I tell you what, if they will go to successwithstuart.com.
Okay.
I've got a little website there that I put up, and anyone that's listened to your podcast can go grab that book for free.
Okay, awesome. We'll put that in the show notes so they can check that out. And what's the best way for our viewers to check out what you're up to, connect with you, and find out a bit more about your
successwithstuart.com. No, wait, that's the one I just did. You talking about like just follow me on Facebook or something?
Connect online. Some people say call me, text me, email me, find me on social media.
Call me, text me, email me. Easy. Stuart at successwithstuart.com. And phone number is 512-844-3254. And basically what I do, Ryan, is I've got a part-time assistant, and I manage my own clients and customers. And then but I handle a limited number, and I do the same thing when I train agents. I handle a limited number. So it's situational, and I'm not one of those guys who's trying to run up a bunch of big numbers. I really have fun doing what I'm doing, and I don't like to get overwhelmed by it. And I want to make sure I can give whoever is involved with me the very best.
And you come highly recommended from Beatty, who's two-time guest on the show, and we've done a lot with him, so he's awesome and loves what you're up to. It's mutual,
and you probably give him enough plugs, but his marketing system is pretty phenomenal.
Yeah, it's awesome, and he speaks super highly of you. So I love what you're doing, and I just am passionate that you're passionate about what you're doing, because I love to see other agents have that same drive and dedication to a niche or a farm, because I think it's missing in our business, and I wish there's more of us, but I'm glad there's not, because there's more opportunities for the agents who are willing to do it. So that's awesome. So thank you, Stuart, for being on the show. I really appreciate you bringing your insight, your wisdom, and your knowledge to our audience. And I know if they take a fraction of what you share, they'll see results. So thank you for bringing that to our audience.
Well, I thank you for doing this podcast. It's badly needed. And if more agents follow the path you're putting out there, more agents would be successful.
Awesome. Appreciate it.
Thanks for checking out today's episode. If you'd like more videos like this, be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Check out our Facebook page and our other social media channels. Looking forward to bringing you more great content like this, and happy farming.